know it's you. You don't have to say a goddamn word because I already know. I'm coming for you. You hear me? You hear me? It's too easy for you. I'm gonna make sure you rot in prison. You.
This work.
I want justice for my wife's murder.
Let's take Tommy fucking Egan down.
Now, in today's breakdown, we're going to be running through all things law enforcement. But it's not just a cat and mouse game between Bobby DeFranco and Tommy Egan we need to keep in mind. After episode 9, AUSA Seng was finally rumbled, not just by Vic, but also by Bobby DeFranco. He was caught accepting a large payment from a lawyer who apparently doesn't seem to exist. And that's also another interesting side plot. Who the hell is Chen, if he doesn't exist? This definitely is one of the most enjoyable aspects to this final season of Force, and arguably one of the most enjoyable law enforcement storylines that we've seen in a very long time. But just like everything else, all these loose ends around Bobby DeFranco, AUSA Seng being rumbled, Vic the Snitch creating an alliance with potentially a unknown mystery character, and also possibly Chen the lawyer, is there more to his character? All these storylines do need to be closed off in episode 10, or do they leave some of these threads around law enforcement open going into the next Power show? Could Bobby DeFranco even turn into maybe a Cooper Saxe, Blanca Rodriguez type of cop that just lingers around in the world of Power chasing Tommy Egan? Definitely a lot to unpack around the world of law enforcement going into the home stretch and the final episode of Power Book 4 Force Season 3. Now, the moment Tommy pulled the trigger on Stacey Marks in episode 7, he knew himself that all hell would break loose with law enforcement. He received that phone call from Bobby DeFranco in episode 8. Tommy didn't need to say anything, but Bobby definitely knew it was him. He knew it was Tommy who pulled the trigger on his wife because Stacey Marks did allude to it in her conversation with Bobby DeFranco towards the end of episode 7. He knows he's got the right person in his sights. He just can't seem to prove it yet with the evidence that he's got, or should I say lack of evidence. Although with the evidence that he did find, which was the phone, if he was thinking clearly, which at the time he wasn't, he was full of raw emotion that we spoke about when it came to DMAC, but if he was thinking with his head and not his heart, maybe he could have taken the Detective Whitman approach from Power Book 2 Ghost. We saw Detective Whitman calling the burner phone that was last in contact with Jabari back in season 1, and we saw Tariq answering. They were then able to get the location to the phone being answered at Stansfield. But again, raw emotion, vengeance, knowing it was Tommy, wanting to get revenge, it was a normal reaction from someone who just lost his wife, albeit they were going through their own personal issues. We then saw them coming face to face with Tommy a bit later on in episode 8, where he then made a promise to slap the handcuffs on his wrist and put him in an orange jumpsuit. And you can definitely tell he's a character who's not going to stop chasing Tommy. The problem is, we've seen this before in Power with law enforcement. Angela Valdez, Cooper Saxe, Blanca Rodriguez, Agent Medina, Tamika Washington. They all knew James St. Patrick was Ghost, they all knew Tommy was a major drug dealer in New York, they knew they were behind multiple murders and a big drug empire in New York. They just never managed to get the evidence or put enough pieces of the puzzle together to arrest them and keep them locked up. There were 2 moments where Tommy and Ghost were both put in orange jumpsuits, where they both lost a short-term battle, but in the grand scheme of things against law enforcement, they always managed to come out on top. The problem with Bobby DeFranco is he is fueled by a personal loss. There's no way he stops until he gets justice for Stacey Marks, and you can definitely tell with his approach, he's really mad, he's full of anger, he's impatient, and he really does want to bring down the hammer. But again, the problem is they don't have enough evidence at this moment in time, and Trina Delgado did warn him not to go after Tommy, but to focus on other suspects and rule them out of the running in terms of killing Stacey Marks, step by step once you rule out all the other suspects and just leave Tommy Egan, that's the way to approach this particular situation and get his man. And with Trina Delgado coming onto the team at this late stage, I was kind of questioning why now. It may have been a scheduling issue, but when you kind of think about it deeper, it does actually kind of help law enforcement's cause because she does also bring a fresh pair of eyes to the case as well. And sometimes you really do need a fresh pair of eyes that will spot something that you didn't or can't. You know, when you've worked on a project or an assignment for so long, you've been investigating the same case and the same details over and over again, but then your brain just kind of goes into a complete mental fog. You just can't seem to then take that next step in your assignment or investigation. You just can't seem to put the pieces of the puzzle together when the answer may just be even staring right in front of you the entire time. Sometimes all it does is take a fresh pair of eyes to have a look and say, did you spot this? Did you consider this? This is where teamwork definitely comes in and where Trina Delgado came in episode 9. She's a fresh pair of eyes on this case and she raised the point of Roberto Ortega's lawyer, Chen. Apparently he's someone who doesn't even seem to exist. There's no record of his name in the books. The more she tried to find out who this person was, the more confusing it became because he's basically a ghost, no trace. Which does also make me ask the question whether there could potentially be more to his character behind the scenes, because he sure does have the look of someone who could be very dangerous. He's got this evil kind of look about him, dating back to the very first episode when we met him with Markovich in episode 1, a type of character and a huge twist they could basically pull out of nowhere, where we think, oh shit, he's the final boss, or he's the one pulling the strings. Maybe he has ties to the Chinese, Madame Wu and the fentanyl business. He may be working for Roberto Ortega as his lawyer, but what if his role actually goes deeper? Because to be honest with you guys, Roberto Ortega is a bit of a joke. He hired 2 hitters that turned out to be a complete joke. He then made the threat to Miguel Garcia with the Mexican passion flower, but he hasn't done or shown anything to us for us actually to fear him. He is now out of jail, so let's see what he's made of. But to be honest, the Marquez cartel, they have been made to look very amateurish, which again brings me back to the topic of Chen. Could he have a deeper role in these organizations and the criminal world if he is someone who apparently doesn't exist and isn't on the radar of anyone? Someone who's basically been hiding in plain sight the entire time, just like we saw in season 2 of Power, like Milan.
Milan, nice to meet you. You were so concerned with Lobos that you neglected me.
It definitely has been a while since we've seen a major twist like this in the world of Power. Someone hiding in plain sight, someone just to basically shock the audience and shock the big players in the world of Power. Milan was the last time where he really did have Ghost spooked. Not many people were able to put Ghost in the position that Milan put him in. He definitely was spooked. He tried to get out from under his thumb, but it looked like Milan had control over him in basically every single aspect of his life, from taking Tommy away, invading his home and threatening his family. He was inside his clubs, he knew his routine, and basically took his entire organization. Ghost was stuck because this was a threat that he never saw coming. And that's something we have been speaking about over the past week when it comes to Tommy's character. I do think he will be able to deal with CBI, Chenard, the Marquez cartel, possibly even law enforcement, but what about a threat that he doesn't see coming? So on the topic of Chen, a character who apparently doesn't exist, a character that has this evil aura about him, could there actually be something more? Just some food for thought. It may not amount to much with just 1 episode left, but definitely worth keeping in mind. Now, with Trina Delgado setting Bobby DeFranco on Chen, what he then uncovered was AUSA Seng accepting a big envelope from Roberto Ortega's lawyer, which he now has caught on camera. He's got the pictures of AUSA Seng accepting the money from Ortega's lawyer, and I definitely did expect AUSA Seng to be rumbled at some point. There was no way he was getting away with being squeaky clean and just being able to walk into Stacey Marks' office. Although I didn't actually expect him to be rumbled by Vic first. He was the one who realized first when he was in this interrogation room with him, where he said, oh shit, so you're basically on someone else's payroll too. So Vic rumbled AUSA Seng, which is why he let him leave, and then Bobby DeFranco rumbled AUSA Seng a bit later on. Now, earlier on when we spoke about Bobby DeFranco being full of emotion, him being emotionally attached to this case because it was his wife who was murdered, him wanting justice for Stacey Marks, so his approach has no doubt been full of emotion, but somewhat restrained at the same time because he still wants to do things by the book. He wants justice the right way because he kind of is a straight by the book kind of guy. He's not like a dirty cop that we've seen before, such as Cooper Sachs, but the fact that he is emotionally attached to this case, will he go to Trina Delgado with a calm mind and show her what he's uncovered? Or does he go straight for AUSA Seng and tells him that he's going to blow up his entire career and life if he doesn't help get justice for Stacey Marks? Because with these images, all he needs to do is expose them. But how does AUSA Seng then respond? Does he threaten Bobby DeFranco because he has the backing of the Marquez cartel? And then how does Bobby DeFranco play this going forward, knowing that AUSA Seng is dirty and he may possibly have had something to do with Stacey Marks' murder? If I were Tommy and if I were a fly in this room and I knew what was going on here inside this particular room, planting the murder weapon on AUSA Seng would probably be the perfect move. Bobby DeFranco has the pictures of him speaking to Ortega's lawyer, accepting a bribe. The murder weapon is then linked to AUSA Seng. Once they dig deeper into the case, they find all the malpractices of AUSA Seng and helping the Marquez cartel. It would be the perfect person to throw the blame on and get rid of the problem of law enforcement. The problem is, Tommy doesn't even know what's going on inside this room. So going forward, he still does have a law enforcement problem unless they uncover AUSA Seng has been working with the Marquez cartel and he gets thrown in jail and all the blame goes on AUSA Seng, leaving Tommy Egan scot-free. I just think with Bobby DeFranco, he still will have eyes for Tommy Egan either way, but the problem that he has with Tommy is he just doesn't simply have enough evidence to tie him to anything like he has with AUSA Seng. How does he even link Tommy to the murder of Stacey Marks if he is to continue to go after Tommy? That's the major question. That's why I made reference to Tommy and Ghost in Power earlier on in the breakdown, because these were two seasoned criminals who were very good at covering their tracks and making sure nothing came back to them. Unless Tommy makes a mistake, a human error, which can definitely happen to the best. Sometimes it's just a lack of judgment, or you're thinking about something else and you make a mistake like leaving your prints on the window, which could very well happen when it comes to Tommy. We know he's going to be dealing with 1,000,001 things in this final episode of Force, so it definitely would be human nature to kind of just let something slip and make a small mistake somewhere else, which Bobby DeFranco is then able to latch onto and then connect the dots. I still feel someone has to pay for Stacey Marks' death in episode 10, whether that's Tommy and the reason why he's leaving Chicago, possibly being run out of Chicago by law enforcement, AUSA Seng, or maybe even Vic Flynn, even though he does have an alibi in Ray. Could Tommy plant the murder weapon on Vic and have him arrested for Stacey Marks' murder? I mean, it would be quite ironic, because this is a man who had freedom in the palm of his hands. He was on the private jet saying goodbye to Chicago with Ray, champagne in hand, but the cockroach just couldn't leave Tommy alone. He had to come back. And it would be now quite ironic if he found himself behind four walls in an orange jumpsuit on the other side of freedom when he was basically in a private jet where he could basically jet off to anywhere in the world. There is also the question of who Vic is creating an alliance with, which I personally feel is with someone unexpected, because if he was going to create an alliance with Jannard, that's not something they need to hide behind a camera. We know these two have spoken before, we know they both want Tommy Egan dead. If Vic was creating an alliance with Jannard, it definitely isn't something they need to hide. So this one, in my opinion, is definitely one to watch. An old threat or a new threat that we haven't considered could definitely be coming into play in episode 10. But Tommy Egan is definitely going to be having shots firing at him from every single angle in episode 10. From the streets to the feds, everybody does want a piece of Tommy Egan. But going into episode 10, the questions around Chen the lawyer. Is there something deeper with his character? How does Bobby DeFranco now play this game now that he knows AUSA Seng is dirty? And what's AUSA Seng's response? Does he threaten Bobby DeFranco, or is he able to bring down the entire house of cards? And how does Vic play this game in episode 10? Will he regret throwing his freedom away in episode 9? Because it really would be quite ironic if he did actually end up in an orange jumpsuit so soon after he was on this private jet. Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.